What if Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him? How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus on Amazon, October 1st, and then wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Jeff Gilson didn't go out looking for adventure, danger, or the answers to most of the controversial political intrigues of the past 30 years. But he found all three when he began investigating the mysterious death of his close friend, Margaret Thatcher's favorite speechwriter. Just an ordinary guy living in a small, sleepy suburb 20 miles outside of London, Jeff's questions provoked a powerful response on both sides of the Atlantic. He was shot at, warned off by the CIA, and formed a close bond with one of Israel's most notorious intelligence officers. Relive Jeff's gripping adventure in his fast-paced book, Maggie's Hammer. Peel away the layers of establishment deception and discover, as Jeff did, that his friend was an assassin with British intelligence, that Great Britain has been America's secret hitman for the past 30 years, and that Princess Diana was not the target in that Parisian tunnel. All of this and more when you visit www.maggieshammer.com and find the link to buying this explosive book online. More and more ordinary people feel they no longer have control of their lives. Jeff fought back. He asked the difficult questions. He set out to redesign his own destiny, and you can do the same using Maggie's Hammer as your guide. Don't waste a moment. Buy it today. Visit www.maggieshammer.com. The Carl O. Helby Holistic Cancer Foundation is a new nonprofit foundation that focuses on a holistic approach to cancer that includes physical, mental, spiritual, and political aspects. Cancer education, research, and care are provided for all types of cancer patients. You can listen to interviews with cancer doctors and survivors and read research on holistic aspects of cancer at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com. That's www.holisticcancerfoundation.com. Manifestation is driven by imagination, intent, and passion. In our culture, all three have been distorted and disabled by modern media and exploitation. Re-engage your imagination and your passion by entering into the world of paranormal romance. Kahir O'Donnell takes her readers on an exciting journey into the endless possibilities of loving, passionate, and mutually respectful male-female relationship. Her latest book, The Long Dark Night, features special ops adventure, a daring rescue, a psychic woman from the stars, and a special agent that will die to protect her. The Long Dark Night by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at kahiraodonnell.com or amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multi-family dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Two of the most distinguished people within the UFO community are with us tonight. The great-grandfather of ufology himself, the one and only Stanton Friedman, who presently resides in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Yay, Fredericton. And Michael, yes. and Michael Horn, the North American media representative for Billy Meyer, who is somewhere in the beautiful state of California. Yay, Michael.
Arizona.
All right, so you moved. Yay, Arizona. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Listening to you two talk, you both raise excellent points. And I just want to thank you for the professionalism that you're both showing.
Oh.
Well, you're very welcome. I don't feel I've been particularly scientific tonight. But
no, I didn't say you were scientific. I said you were professional.
I know. Well, I'm a professional scientist. What am I going to say? I was a union waiter back 60 years ago. We're not talking about that.
60 years ago? Geez, what was I doing? Swimming in embryonic fluid somewhere.
No, I think this is a fascinating subject, and Michael has done a good job of making sensible claims On the other hand, I haven't been able to sort out in my own head whether he is really saying that Billy is the greatest thing since peanut butter. You know what I mean? That we have one of the world's great thinkers and prophets, I guess. I'm waiting for a religious side, but I haven't seen any with Billy hasn't started a new religion as far as I know.
No.
Has he, Michael?
No, actually, Stanton raises a really good point there, because you see, while I've said, okay, the Meyer case is the only authentic case, I use that position, and it's one that I can stand behind, but I think it's more important to say this because I respect the fact that Stanton's a scientist, and if we get to a point, let's say where Stanton and I and anybody else that he wants, where we can examine the Meyer case and we come to a determination, okay, it's authentic. It doesn't matter whether I say it's the only this, that, or the other thing, because by being authentic, by having criteria that are rigid scientific criteria, and that means using the scientific method, considering means, motive, and opportunity, even when we question, could he have hoaxed this, could he have backdated? If we come to a conclusion, if reasonable people are going, by golly, this thing's real, then we get into some very profound territory because there's a reason for it. And that is really rarely spoken about in the UFO world at all, about anything. It's always theorized if there's extraterrestrials. In the Meyer case, we know the reason. And you're right, Stanton, there is no religion being formed here. There's information, there's what's called the spiritual teaching, but there's no religion, there's no beliefs. You don't join things and get people knock on the door. You can participate if you want. You can join a study group and all that, but there's a reason for the contacts. And that's the thing that if you're interested, I'll go into that, but I passionately want your participation as a scientist, because if we join in that study together, we can't lose whatever the outcome may be.
Well, I've been trying to sort that out. What are the implications here? You're saying we've got somebody who's made successful predictions of importance, and there's a temptation to, so, that's the next question. Mm-hmm. Where do we go from there? Is Billy representing anybody but Billy?
Well, let me answer then, because I think you're going to have now the kind of great questions that the audience is going to be thinking of and wants answers to. Meyer, again, I'm going to always say this in the beginning of these kinds of things, according to the information in the case, because I wasn't sitting there with Billy when he was 5 years old, or even 3 months ago when he's meeting allegedly with these people. Here's the deal. He has met with, been tutored by, taken on board with, etc., an extraterrestrial human race for a long time, almost 3/4 of a century, not to make us feel old here, folks. But there's been a reason, and if we digest and condense it down to what that reason is, the way I read it, and I've said this since 2004, is to help us assure our own future survival, not that anybody is coming to save us. No one's attacking us. We do that ourselves very well. And when we look into, and then I'll stop here with a sentence because I think you're going to have a lot to say. When we look at what Meyer has predicted, we're not talking about mystical things. We're talking about, since 58 and 51, the environmental climate change. He's the first guy. Global warming, the IS, the Islamic State, radical Islam, 58, the 2 U.S. wars with Iraq, all this stuff in the 50s. And then in 1987, it goes on and on. But he's foretold what's going on now with Russia, the dangers we're facing, and why, according to him, these extraterrestrials who, however they do it, have long foreseen many of these specific things, are trying to get us to take a different course, because this one is dead end.
Okay, so what you're saying is he's giving us the warning from alien visitors that we're heading in the wrong direction.
And they have very specific recommendations, because anybody, we don't need an extraterrestrial now or a prophet to say, hey, the world is pretty screwed up. So
yes.
there has to be, another shoe to drop, which means how do you get out of this? And that's what the case is really about. It's not so much about the UFOs and the ETs. It's from the beginning been about us, where we're going, and how we can correct that course. But for people who are, understandably going to go, well, extraterrestrials and profit, we have to take the scientific approach and say, let's see if we can determine by examining openly, publicly, with people who are scientific like you, if this is credible, if it's true. Does this hold muster? Can the presentation by a proponent of the case be shown to be valid? Are the copyrights there? Is the proof there? Are the analyses there? And then, if so, okay, what does it mean to us? And then we can proceed.
Okay, you're not going to tell us what it means to us yet, though.
Well, I can, but
saying?
I want to go step by step, because I think that you, as a scientist, I'm not going to, even though I'm a motor mouth, I want to stop long enough, because when you hear something, you want to say, okay, well, what about this? And I want to be able to answer you as best I can. So let me stop and let you do it.
Well, okay. I will admit that I have not spent a lot of time on the Meyer case. I spent more of it way back with Wendell and at that time frame, and looking at stuff back then, and that's been a long time. And I didn't feel that was my mission in life. That's your mission in life. It's not mine.
Yeah.
So we're working in different areas, but it's the same ranch.
Yes.
I'm concerned about the world we live in. I am trying to get people to be concerned about how we behave and how we look to aliens and so forth. I did this, how to make ufology respectable. I gave a talk last week. And one of them is to take a realistic look at the behavior of this planet. And I'm an old guy, but it really bothers me that we'll spend $1 trillion this year on things military.
Yes.
And there are lots of starving kids. That makes no sense to me.
No.
So there's a common ground here. We care, is what it boils down to.
Yes.
And whether it comes from Billy Meyer or Tom Jones, well, maybe Tom Jones is the wrong name.
So what's new, Pussycat?
You know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I would like to do more about this and to look at more of the evidence than I have. And that means both sides of the story, although, as you know, I am not very enamored of the nasty, noisy negativists, as I call them, on the UFO subject, the ancient academics and fossilized physicists. I've taken them on. I've done battle with the debunkers and won. So I've got room for what Meyer may have to offer. I'm not sure how realistic it is. He doesn't. Is he out promulgating his ideas anywhere, or are you the one doing it for him?
Well, I'm one of the people. Let me explain a little how that works. Meyer himself does not go around giving lectures or interviews or anything else. He really, years and years ago, he in one of the texts, he was complaining that, this is, part of the anecdote here of the information, that he said to them, I really can't do these presentations. It's not me. And they said, well, you've got to find a way, and there will be people that'll show up. Okay. In the English-speaking world, for the most part, in America for sure, because I'm authorized, but I've also presented, as you present around the world, I presented in Hong Kong, Australia, Amsterdam, London, etc. So yeah. I do that as an advocate, and what other people do who work with Meyer is they simply help him disseminate the writings, the information, because the bulk of the material is not about the UFO part of it. To him, it's kind of like, well, that's not important to me. That's the ships they came in, but this is what it's about. So to fine tune this, for the longest time, they have spoken about many of the mechanisms that we are abusing on Earth, how we need to rebalance them, right down to how we would put down terrorism. And the strange thing is, of all people in the world who has been fairly consistently echoing some of Meyer's material, not the other way around, Vladimir Putin, who's no angel, but Vladimir Putin, the Pope recently came out with a couple of the key elements in the Meyer teaching. And when we go back into the texts, we see that the ETs allegedly say to Meyer, in the coming years, you're going to see that the Pope and the Vatican are going to start expounding what you have been trying to get out, but they'll be doing it to enrich their religious nests. They're not doing it for the same reasons you are. So bottom line is, the really core material here is highly thinking-oriented and action-oriented, how you proceed from perceiving an issue to understanding how its origin as well, cause and effect, the universe operates on that law, and correcting the direction while there's still time through proper thinking, logic, reason. There's nothing mystical going on in this material. It's very, very grounded down to earth and deep thinking, which is why I have been craving to speak to more scientists, and I'm glad that you and I are finally at least communicating about this. But just so people know, I will provide to you any and everything at the rate of speed you want it and answer any and all questions I can or get the answers so that you've got a better perspective as to what the hell is Michael Horn carrying on about here. So I'll answer anything I can, including tonight.
All right, gentlemen, before we go any further, there is a message here from James in Anchorage, Alaska. And the reason I'm bringing this up now, because, we've got a number of messages for you guys, but this one here made a lot of sense. Who's this Wendell Stevens you are talking about? Never heard of him before.
Sure. I can.
Michael, you tell him about Wendell, and I'll tell him about
exactly.
Wendell.
Okay, go ahead. You can. We both knew him.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay. Wendell Stevens was a retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Air Force. In 1947, while still in the Air Force, he was tasked with investigating UFOs, and he became very enamored with the subject. When he was first approached in the mid-'70s by a woman named Lou Zinstock from Europe with evidence and photographs from Meyer, he was all gung-ho to go over and investigate it. But his friends, Lee and Britt Elders, who were professional, independent, private investigators for Fortune 500 companies and all that, very skeptical people, they said to Wendell, listen, Wendell, you get a little enthusiastic about stuff. We're going to go with you because more than likely this is a hoax. So Wendell, indeed, subsequent to the Meyer case, was investigating any and everybody's claims about UFOs, and even as Billy Meyer said, and as Lee and Britt have said, and Lee sent me an email to this effect not more than 4 weeks ago, Wendell often got a little out there with what he thought was real. He said, because I asked Lee and Britt, I said, okay, I know Wendell's behind the Meyer case, but you guys went there as the skeptics. What do you think? And Lee said to me, almost verbatim, Michael, 99.9%, it's got to be true. I always reserve a 0.1%, but we saw stuff we cannot explain any other way, and Meyer is an honest man. So it's stuff like that. But go ahead, because I know that Stanton's got the other side
I
of the
met
coin.
Lee Elder and Lee and Britt many, many years ago. We're talking, geez, it seems like a very long time ago.
Right.
Wendell, I'm glad you said it. He often got carried away with things. He was an enthusiast. Yes. He was not somebody who made sure he dotted all the I's and crossed the T's, to say the least. And so it's hard to separate Wendell from Billy because Wendell was the one making the noise about him back late 70s or early 80s, etc. And part of my call it rejection of the Meyer case, and not I let it's in my movie. UFOs are real, still available. Go to my website, www.stantonfriedman.com, just so you know I'm not lying. The movie is there, and the Meyer case is in it, and Wendell is in it, quite prominently, as a matter of fact. For anybody who wants to look at these things and decide for themselves. I was younger then, I will say that, to say the least. Wendell was an enthusiast, and he had a habit of collecting UFO stuff like you wouldn't believe, books, pictures, and it seemed like he bought into everything. Michael, I don't know whether you think that's true, but it was my impression at the time that he didn't find a case he didn't like.
Too many of them. I agree with you.
So that has had a strong impact on my feeling about Billy. And I read Cal Korff's book, and on the other hand, I didn't accept his objections, all of them, because I thought he was being cavalier, if you will, in some of the things he said and did.
Well, I think that Cal Korff's credibility has long been, shot down, and that anything that
shot down's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
yes.
And I think that anything.
But he did go to Switzerland. I'll give him credit for that.
Yes, he did.
And
in disguise, and he'd never met with Meyer. But what Stanton was just saying about Wendell, yeah, sure. And the thing is, we have to really separate because, for instance, when I send Stanton the photo analyses, you're going to see that those weren't done by Wendell. I even recently ran into.
I hope not.
Yeah, no, they weren't, because he went and deliberately got people who were independent of that. You'll see people from JPL, NASA. I ran into a guy named Nils Ragnerud about 4 months ago up in Northern Cal. Ragnerud was one of the original people to analyze the sound recordings. So what you've got here, what we have here is stuff that Wendell isn't. It doesn't rest on Wendell any more than it really rests on Lee. It rests more on the independent analyses done. And the beauty of it, Stanton, is that today, you yourself, your grandkid, you can go and actually test one of Meyer's photos yourself using Photoshop, and you can also read like the 74-page report done on one of the more controversial things. He lists all the protocols. So skeptics, scientists, anybody now can test with technology that's 40 years in advance of what Meyer could have even had available to him, let alone the scientists of the day. So that's where I try to
there's something you haven't mentioned, and I'm a little surprised. He didn't have full use of both arms, did he?
No, he's a one-handed man. This is the thing. So many people take it for granted. Oh, well, anybody could do it. Billy Meyer has one hand. And what I've said this in films too, like, Stanton said things in presentations and books. I said, the skeptics give Billy Meyer so much credit that he must be a master of 20 or 30 different disciplines, from photography, model making, special effects, digital effects, sound recording, metallurgy, the list goes on and on because of all the areas in which he's presented evidence and information, and that he did it all with one hand while raising a family with 3 kids, renovating a rundown farmhouse, dodging assassins, running on UFO. It's like if the guy had no hands, the skeptics would say he did it with his teeth. So it's an amazing thing. And yet the beauty of Meyer is that he is not dramatic. He doesn't puff himself up. He's a very kind of neutral person who leaves it to people to go pro or con, and never points to the stuff that we, people who've been independently going through this, are going, wow, look, he predicted it and it came true exactly as he said, and we've got it in a copyrighted book. No, Meyer never says that. It's up to us to find it. So I and other people and myself, we've been looking into this stuff, and sure, there's controversies, and sure, there can be places where people say, well, did he backdate this, or is this really well, let's discuss it. Let's test it. Let's do it together rather than this is my case and that's your case and all this stuff. We're in this together in this world. We know that. And we've got to use the best possible evidence and advice and what have you. I think we will find that this is about the most grounded, unexpectedly grounded stuff you can imagine. It's none of this channeled stuff from outer space. So this is why to be able to speak tonight with Stanton and to have this invitation that we could cooperate in this examination, that's the best thing that's ever happened. If this is true, we help to make history here. And if not, then, at the very least, $500 goes to your favorite charity. I don't think I'm going to be out a penny on this, and we might just be helping your grandkids and my kids and all the rest of us in this world.
Hey, I got a great-grandson, remember?
That's right. I forgot.
I used to call Stanton the grandfather of ufology, and I was corrected, so this is why I now call him the great-grandfather of ufology.
It's perfectly appropriate, but because I don't know anybody else who's my age who's still kicking around. Well, I do. Dr. Bob Wood is still kicking around. He's older than I am, which you can better believe. But let's go back to something, Michael. I would like to look at more of this stuff.
Sure.
And I think we can arrange that. And, where we go from there, I don't know. I've got, I'm not looking for anything in life. I've been there, done that sort of thing at my stage. So I'd like to get more deeply into this. I think, maybe I'm wrong. Have you got a bunch of questions down there?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I've got one more question from one of our listeners, and then I want to get back to you guys because everybody's tuned in to listen to you both. This is from Joshua in Wisconsin, and he says, what is the difference between civilian sightings of Billy Meyer's UFOs and the conventional UFO sightings that everyone else sees?
Sure. Let's try to answer it this way. It's not... Meyer has, according to this information, a specific relationship with, at least one and possibly more races of alleged, I'm being as careful as I can, extraterrestrial human beings. The mission, if you will, being to bring awareness to Earth that we are not alone, that there are other advanced human races, many of who have gone through the kind of miserable challenges that we have and that we're faced with, and having survived, however they did, they want to assist without interfering. Now, there are, as we've said before, over 120 witnesses to the craft, and there's 5 other photographers, including a Swiss skeptic. Therefore, the craft that Meyer sees predominantly, and he's seen some other ones as well that were not from these people, but they are from these races that he has been in touch with, as is the case with the witnesses that are close at hand around him and some people in other countries who've seen the same craft. That doesn't mean that people, even in the U.S. or other places, and I wasn't trying to give that impression, haven't seen either the Plejaren craft or other extraterrestrial craft. There's some more very startling information in the case we may or may not have time to get into tonight about, but there, according to the information in the Meyer case, according to the information from the guy I know who held an above top secret clearance level above the level of the president, most of the craft that are seen are not ET. It doesn't mean all of them aren't, but we cannot prove it. I can't prove that they're not ET, and I can't prove that they are. I can only say that the best evidence establishes that what Meyer has been photographing and filming in a period between 1964 and 1981 were not made on this world, and that we can support that. And people can also email me and ask me for links. Of course, I'm happy to respond.
Now, Stanton, I've got a question for you here from Sandra in Freeport, Bahamas. She'd like to know, why are people still talking about Roswell when there has been no news about what was supposed to have happened for years?
It becomes the target for all kinds of people who try to show, and I was trying to think, this just happened last week, somebody brought up an argument that Roswell was baloney, they say, so nothing is true, and that's the end of the UFO question. So it's held up as an example of an important event, which I definitely think it was, but people the debunkers keep coming back to it as, let's see, if I show that was baloney, then everything else is baloney. So it's become a target, if you will, for every debunker. Since it's the best known case, we got to try to debunk it. And new books come out all the time that are trying to debunk it. And so that it's the best known case. Look, the Roswell event this year, festival, had over 7,000 people in 3 days down there. And to get to Roswell is not easy, believe me. But it's 200 miles from Albuquerque, 200 miles from Amarillo, 200 miles from El Paso. That so many people are there is an indication in the larger sense of people's interest around the world, because they come from all over the world, in the subject of UFOs, whether it's Billy Meyer or anything else you want. So Roswell still gets talked about, partly because of the character of the people involved. There was only one atomic bombing group in the whole world at that time. And so that's part of what makes it so significant, is we're not talking about guys who were sweeping the floor. We're talking about the intelligence officer for the only atomic bombing group in the world at that time.
Well, let me ask you something, Stan, that's something that has boggled my imagination. If Jesse Marcel was the officer that so many people claim he was, why did he take evidence from a crash site, bring it home, wake up his wife and family, and let them manhandle the evidence instead of bringing it right to the airbase?
Well, look, he went to the airbase first thing in the morning. It was a long drive back. That was evidence that nobody had said was classified at the time.
But as an intelligence officer, wouldn't that be common knowledge? Like if you're a police officer, you go to a crime scene and you bring evidence from the crime scene and you decide to go home with that evidence and let your wife and child play with it, the evidence is tainted. It's not admissible. So in my books, the fact that Jesse Marcel brought the evidence home puts an entirely different spin on the entire story and alleviates and negates any credibility that Jesse Marcel has in this case.
I don't think so at all. You don't get to be the intelligence officer for the 509th,
but
only atomic bombing group in the world.
Yeah, okay,
without
fine.
Being reliable, respectable, etc. Now, remember, he went out there. Colonel Blanchard told him to take with him their counterintelligence corps guy, because he thought what this strange wreckage might be from Russian spies, any kind of spies. After all, you can understand that there would be spies in New Mexico. 2 of the 3 nuclear weapons labs are there.
Sure.
You know, the rockets were being fired there that we had captured from the Germans and so forth. So it was obviously a target for spies. And certainly Colonel Blanchard didn't say, Jesse, I think this is probably a flying saucer.
I understand where you're going.
When the wreckage came back, it was clearly strange stuff.
Yeah, but Stan, I understand where you're coming from. So does that mean that Jesse Marcel would have taken a Soviet satellite back to his house and let his son and his wife manhandle?
No, he had pieces. This wasn't a vehicle. It wasn't a manufactured thing, a radio equivalent thereof. It was pieces of foil-like material and plastic, like a bag of garbage, if you will. In other words, it had no form. It had no function that you could tell or anything. It was pieces of wreckage. And he wanted his son to see this.
Why?
Because it was curious. It was strange.
Okay, it was curious. It was strange. It was unusual. And yet, being the base intelligence officer, instead of taking the strange, unusual debris.
This is late at night.
No, wait a second, Stan.
He's going in the next morning. He's been gone all day.
That is not an excuse. That is not an excuse. He was derelict in his duty. He broke the chain of custody. Anything that he says or anything he did is negated.
No, it isn't. His commander, after all, was there, and they had every opportunity to punish him, if you will.
Okay.
They sent him with this stuff the next day. That, after the fact, what's that, post-dictions again? After the fact, you can say, gee, he probably shouldn't have done that. And he would probably agree with you.
If I would have been his superior officer, I would have court-martialed him.
Well, Colonel Blanchard had every opportunity. Remember, Blanchard went on to be a 4-star general.
Big deal.
He was well thought of, too.
Richard Nixon became president of the United States.
And resigned.
So just because he's a 4-star general doesn't mean that there wasn't some hanky-panky. Listen, when we look at the big scenario, you've got a former top-level bombing unit. Things are going a little soft. You know what I mean? They're losing their
Well, the Cold War was heating up more than ever in 47.
Okay, well, there you go. Then that's more reason for Marcel. I don't care if he's a base intelligence officer, whether it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning, you get your ass from point A to point B. You don't stop and let your kid play with your evidence. You do that, you shouldn't be in the job you're in. You should be court-martialed, and there should be serious repercussions, not only on him, but looking over the years on every person who was responsible for that break of custody.
Well, that's an interesting judgment, but it's a little late to make it now.
But no, it's not too late, because what it does, it taints the entire story.
You're going to change his military record now?
I'm not going to change his military record, but what it does is it puts into question the entire Roswell incident. That's what it does, Stan.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
You're looking at a small aspect of a big picture. Remember, Jesse didn't find any bodies. Jesse didn't bring back a vehicle. He brought back a bunch of scrap stuff, small pieces of foil-like material that didn't look like anything conventional. And Jesse had seen airplane crashes in the Pacific when he was in World War II.
Okay.
And so he brings back this stuff. He doesn't know what it is. It's peculiar. That's what he knows.
Yeah.
How did it... In our first conversation, he made a point about there had to be a mid-air explosion because this stuff was spread out over such a large area, and there wasn't a hole. The airplane hadn't... When airplanes crash, you get a big hole in the ground.
Sometimes.
Normally.
Sometimes.
A crater, call it what you want.
Sometimes. There wasn't a big crater in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where that plane went down.
Maybe it didn't go down. But all I'm saying is that Jesse did his thing. His boss accepted that, or he wouldn't have sent him with the stuff. Maybe he sent him so he could get him out of the way so he could make up another story. Who knows? To General Ramey. I talked to retired General Dubose, who was there when Jesse got there with this stuff, and who took the call from General Ramey's commander, telling him to cover this up. I don't want to, get the press off our back. I don't care how you do it. Send some of that wreckage up here today with one of your colonel couriers, and I don't want you to ever talk about it again. Not even with your buddy Roger Ramey. Yeah. This is from Thomas Jefferson Dubose to me. I located him. Nobody else knew that he was alive. I was persistent.
Well, Stan, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this because we have a question now from Michael. Michael, this is from Donald in Longueuil, Quebec.
Okay.
He said that he's attended a number of your lectures.
Uh-oh.
No, and he says, give Michael a 2 thumbs up for me, Rob. Here's the question. Why was Meyer chosen for, and he's got in quotations, this mission?
Okay, well, again, according to the information in the case, and that's why I always say there's things that I, claim I can come as close to proving as possible, and there are other things I have no way of proving. They either deal with information about the far distant past, the as yet unarrived future, or things that I have to call speculative. That being said, here's what's said in the case. According to this information, reincarnation is a fact of life. We don't know that. We either believe it or we don't, but according to the information, the Playaran people, who we also don't know maybe if they exist or not, they know it's a fact of life, and the thing that reincarnates is known as the human spirit. And it's a matter of evolution. It's a very long scientific process that human beings go through countless lifetimes to evolve gain knowledge, gain wisdom, etc., etc. It is said that Meyer's spirit, the spirit that animates this personality, has a very, very, very ancient origin and has done this gig before in our history in the role as other prophets in the past. Now, being a prophet, as we could probably figure out, is not a very glorious gig. It is pretty thankless while you're alive. People will stone you, crucify you, try to burn you, whatever. And in Meyer's case, there have been 22 attempts on his life for his trouble. But to try to focus back on that answer, it is, according to the information in this case, that this spirit or spirit form in its previous incarnations as a prophet also was mentored by the Pleiaren extraterrestrials throughout our history, always for the same purpose that it has today, to try to help us, the humanity of Earth, the confused humanity of Earth, to correct our thinking, our course, and to assure our own future survival so that we don't go back to the Dark Ages or the Stone Age. And Meyer said as far back as November of last year, if we do not have a concerted international military effort against the IS, the danger is that the world will be sent back to the Dark Ages because of this unimaginable thing that he somehow foretold specifically in 1958.
Wow. Okay, thank you very much.
Let me throw a comment in there,
sure,
too. It may surprise you, but I am convinced that one of the many things that aliens, I'll call them aliens instead of ETs, I like that better. I think one of the things that they would know that we are not very good about is all these paranormal things, telepathy, reincarnation. I've said this. I think they would know about these things. You know, how do you take people through walls? Well, I don't know how to do it. I'll admit that people are mostly nothing.
I know how to take a person through a wall. I know how to take a person
use the door
or the window. Yeah.
Oh well, okay. But what I'm saying is, I'm not fighting at all the notion of reincarnation or spirits.
Right.
Call it what you want. There are a lot of different words here, but so I'm interested in that because. There are times when I get sick and tired of people who think that we're the most advanced species around, and nobody knows anything that we don't know after all. And one of my mantras is that progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. Mm-hmm. And so, reincarnation, to me, no big deal. I think it happens a lot. And I think we are in desperate need of a new path for mankind. I don't know whether it's Billy Meyer's path. I haven't looked at that carefully enough to say that his path I find acceptable. But so I'm intrigued with that, and so I do want to find out more. And correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but it seems to me Billy Meyer has never really exalted himself.
No,
he doesn't get on the stage and say, listen to me.
No, you're right about that, Stanton. He has simply put the information out. He's answered questions. I would say he's very masterful at neutrality. He answers what's asked to the best of his ability. He asks questions of the Pleiaren. Sometimes he's been frustrated that they've only given him partial answers. But it's a kind of a tricky little thing. Well, they'll say to him, well, you didn't ask about that part. And he said, well, why didn't you tell me? And they said, well, you didn't ask about that part. And he sometimes does the same thing, but he does not run around beating his own drum. This is why it's all about self-responsibility. And, I approach the idea of reincarnation. I think it makes sense, but I can't prove it or disprove it. I simply think it's a logical mechanism by which we could, as human beings, be evolving far beyond our time on Earth through many lifetimes and greater knowledge and wisdom. And the beauty of the Meyer material is it actually explains a lot of how that supposedly works. And it's very logical. It makes sense. They don't even use the word believe. in their conversations or in the teaching, unless they're criticizing that people believe things instead of finding out to know them as truth. That's why I've been passionately interested in the case, not so much about the UFO part, which is, of course, where we start in order to get people's attention.
Well, I've got my own theory about reincarnation, gentlemen, and it's very simple. If we recycle, so does God.
Well,
that sounds like an interesting line of
Don't worry.
Why not?
Don't worry about dying. You'll live through it.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. We have approximately 11 minutes left. Stanton, I've got a question here for you from Pierre in Paris, France, who is listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network.
Goodness.
His question is, what, and this is to Stanton Friedman, what is the most compelling evidence that you have seen that UFOs are real?
It's a collection of all the large-scale scientific studies. If you mean if I ever had a sighting, no, I have not. I've never seen a neutron or a gamma ray either. They're real, too. We have a lot of data. So if you look at my books, I look at large-scale scientific studies. I do focus on two cases in particular, the Roswell case and the Betty and Barney Hill case, because I got involved. I met Betty and Barney Hill and so forth, and I've been working with Betty's niece, and so we make a good team. I'm intrigued with that. I'm intrigued with the blacked out documents and whited out documents. Got to give the NSA credit for being creative. I'm intrigued with the lies that the government has told on occasion. Matter of fact, what really got me rolling in this whole business way back in 60, when I picked up a copy of the report I mentioned before, Blue Book Special Report number 14, the biggest study ever done, and there's the Secretary of the Air Force in the press release. They didn't distribute the report, they distributed the press release, saying that even the unknown 3% could have been explained as conventional phenomena or illusions if more complete observational data had been available. That really made me angry because I had the report and the unknowns were 21.5% and completely separate from the 9% for which there wasn't enough information.
Right.
Why did they lie? I don't like the Secretary of the Air Force lying to me. I mean, 21.5 is not 3 rounded off. That's what got me rolling. Why the lies? I'd read 10 books. None of them mentioned this Special Report 14. That surprised me, too. And when I find this misrepresentation at that high a level, that got me angry.
All right, gentlemen, we're at the point of tonight's debate where you each have 2 minutes to make your final point. We'll start off with Stanton Friedman, since, Michael, you started the debate. So, Stanton Friedman, your 2 minutes start now.
Okay. I am not yet convinced that Billy Meyer has been in contact with aliens and has done all these things that it is claimed that he has done. But I can't prove that he didn't. And I'm willing to look at a lot more data and take it seriously. I'm at the stage of my life where I'm not beholden to anybody. I can stand up and say I was wrong if that's the case. But I think what's important here is something that Michael said about the need of the planet for getting realigned, if you will. That's not your word, but close enough. And I think that's what we all should be concerned about, Billy Meyer or not. And it has nothing to do with me or Wendell Stevens. It's a question of what's going on in the world and how do we get out of this terrible situation we're in now, with terror hither, thither, and yon, and so much of our energy going toward evil stuff, if you will, as opposed to feeding the poor, the starving, and curing the sick. And I think somebody out there has got to be doing a better job than we've been doing. And they must all have had to face challenges that get in the way of future progress. So I think if we can all dig into this stuff, we'd be much better off than accepting what's going on blindly as that's the way things have to be. More guns, more bombs, more killing, more starving. I think that's the big thing here is where do we go from here? Whether Billy has shown us the way, I don't know. But certainly some of what he is saying makes sense. We've got a long way to go to get back where my great-grandson can grow up in a decent world.
All right, that's the end of the 2-minute statement from Stanton. And now, Michael, your final statement.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank Stanton, and you, of course, Rob, for arranging this. But I want to thank Stanton for, his, ability and interest in a scientific approach to this topic, and if I understand correctly as well, for the willingness now to look at the information, the evidence, and to pose questions and challenges that I will be glad, of course, to do my best to address. I, of course, agree that our task now, we're both we're on the road with all this stuff, and we're a bit up there in years. It is the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of this world, the young people, and I interact with a lot of them here at the university where I live, that are inheriting the mess of this unfortunate world and our carelessness and thoughtlessness over many decades and maybe more. So in the spirit of that cooperation, of our wanting to create a something of use, a legacy that enriches the future generations, gives them things that are hopeful, that are accurate, that are truthful and logical and realistic, and that teach the best ways that we can, direct to for remedying these situations, which I think are contained in abundance in the Meyer material. I hereby say I am willing and able, and I want to and will work with, follow up with Stanton. We can even coordinate some things with you as well, Rob, if anything passes through you, emails coming. Anyway, we'll do this in a stepwise way so that people can start to make up their minds and see if this is true, the significance of it for our future survival, then I think will become apparent to everybody, and we will work together in the same direction. That's what I'd like to see here.
All right, that's your 2 minutes. Now, for each of you, Stanton, can you let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and where they can get your books and videos?
Okay. The best way is to look at my website, www.stantonfriedman, that's FRIEDMAN.com. That lists my books. It gives my email address. I'm easy to reach. I answer my own phone, which for some reason a lot of people are surprised by. I'm a one-man operation. I don't have a secretary.
All right. And Michael Horn, how can people contact you?
I've got a
books
website which is called theyfly.com. Look up in the sky, theyfly.com. Just theyfly.com, and there's a blog, theyflyblog.com. I've got a YouTube channel. All these things are linked from my Theyfly blog, Theyfly website. And I, too, answer all my email. I, too, am a one-man band over here, but I guess it's just part of our generational stuff. And I respond to all email. I'll be doing some traveling for 10 days, but in time I get back to everyone that takes the time to write me. So like Stanton, I'm very glad to respond. I can say if anybody has listened to the show and they want to get one of the DVDs, one of the films from my website, all they have to do is put your name in there, Rob, with the order, and they're going to get 2 for 1.
Wow.
And just, Stanton, I'm going to be in touch with you, and I hope you with me. And let's see if we can't make a contribution to humankind that we didn't even anticipate before we got involved together.
Gentlemen, I want to take
I
want to take this opportunity of thanking you both. I think tonight a dialogue has been started that will go in the right direction. So I want to thank you both for your time. Stanton, take care of yourself. The best of health to you, my friend. And to you, Michael Horn, another good friend. Take care of yourself and my very best to your daughter.
Thank you so much.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night. Both of you guys.
Good night.
Good night now. All right, Exo Nation, that was Michael Horn and Stanton Friedman on the debate on Billy Myers. Now, we have on our website at www.exonradiotv.com a poll that we're going to keep up for the next 10 days. That's at www.xzoneradiotv.com, where you can tell us who you think won the debate tonight. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and this is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, the Starcom Radio Network, the Digital Broadcast Network, and the Digital Satellite Network. And speaking about the Starcom Radio Network, listen to my good friend Ed Till Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. at www.starcomradionetwork.com. For more information on Stanton Friedman, www.stantonfriedman.com, and for Michael Horn, www.theyfly.com. My name's Rob McConnell. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue right here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.